I watched Creed with screenwriter Ryan Covington, and we're going to let you watch our conversation. This is the start of what I hope will be a regular series on this channel. In this age of streaming, we hardly ever get the commentaries that we used to get on DVDs and Blu-rays, especially from screenwriters, and I personally really miss them. So I decided to start recording some myself. As I'm sure you already know, Creed was the continuation of the Rocky franchise. It had such a big cultural impact that it spawned 2 sequels and had a really big effect on the careers of director Ryan Coogler, star Michael B. Jordan, and of course, Ryan Covington. In a second, you're going to see the conversation that Aaron and I had while we watched his movie, and my hope is that you'll actually watch the movie along with us in real time. I watched it on Apple TV, but you can watch it in whatever way works for you. I will be calling out the timestamp at a few times and also including little clips of the movie on the screen so that you can make sure you're following along accurately. Aaron's going to talk about how he got involved in the movie, some of the highlights of the experience, some of the more challenging things to execute, and a whole lot more. It was such a treat for me to watch this with him, and I cannot wait for you to see it. And by the way, I've got several more of these lined up already, so if you're somebody who'd like to see more commentaries, definitely hit those like and subscribe buttons. Okay, let's get into it. What's up, everybody? I'm Nathan Graham Davis. I am here with Ryan Covington, writer of Creed, and we are going to basically do a running commentary on the movie, like back when we used to have DVDs and Blu-rays loaded with special features. Super excited about this. It's the type of thing I've been missing for a really long time. Sounds like Aaron has been too. And I'm really excited that he's willing to kind of test out this new idea with me. Aaron, like before we jump into it, do you think you could give kind of just the 90-second version of your backstory, how you got into writing, so on and so forth?
Um, yeah. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I basically in undergrad decided I wanted to try it, so I applied at USC, got in 2008. Met Ryan Coogler. We were there at the same time, and we started developing Creed in school. We're just thinking we could write a cool spec and see where it would go. And then, of course, post school, the success of Fruitvale Station that he and Michael had, we were able to make Creed happen. That's kind of the short run to get into where we are now.
That I didn't know that was the background of it. This is wild. All right, we're off to a really good start, man. That's a crazy story. So this was a spec?
No, it wasn't spec. The idea
Okay.
was to spec it,
Got it.
but we started
Okay.
outlining it, and we started outlining it and had a little treatment, and then Ryan was like, "Oh man, I had Fruitvale in Sundance, and we found some financiers. We're gonna go shoot this for $2. Fruitvale was super cheap." So but when I'm done with that, we can get back to this writing Creed. Well, Fruitvale took off, and Ryan was repped at WME, so he was able to meet people there, meet Stallone's agent. So it all happened before we actually wrote the spec, but we had done a lot of work to get it to a point where he could pitch it and get Michael interested. I wouldn't say attached, but definitely interested. And then of course, it all came together.
That's absolutely wild. That's awesome. All right. Well done. This is a good start. Why don't we go ahead and jump right into it? And I had sent you a few questions just kind of in advance that I think would be really cool to kind of see if we can answer along the way. I mean, you kind of did answer the first one, which was how did you land this job? And then would also just kind of love to hear about like what's the most personal part of the movie to you? What was the major highlight or the major highlights of the experience for you? Most challenging note you had to execute, and the overall impact on your career. I think those are things that would be really interesting to the majority of the people who watch this, which will, I think, be mostly screenwriters or just like really diehard film fans. But if you're
Right,
ready, why don't we do like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing, and then people can start pushing play on their side at the same time. So we'll do five, four,
right.
three, two, one, and we are going.
Yeah.
Lion.
Yeah, Lion.
All right, great. So how close is the opening we're about to see to kind of the way you first envisioned it?
The opening's an interesting story. So it came about much later. We were maybe, I want to say, a week from actually shooting. We were in Philadelphia, and Ryan was like, I got this idea for an opening. And he hands me these 3 pages that are this opening scene. So it ended up getting shot with reshoots like over the summer. We shot in basically the end of winter. This was shot 6 months later. So
No
this wasn't
kidding.
a part of our original pitch or story. Something Ryan realized that he needed to tell the story as we were gearing up for production.
That's really interesting. I feel like this is in the script that I have. I
It would
haven't
be in the
looked.
script you had, yeah.
It is.
It
Did they
just
put
wouldn't
that
be
together
in.
for
It
like
just wasn't
Academy
in.
Award stuff?
Probably, yeah.
Like I know
Well, I
like
mean,
when
we
they
weren't
want to make it
really,
for consideration, they put it all together, right? Like
yeah, but we weren't up for all those like screenwriting awards. We didn't get in. They didn't submit us for all those. So
I knew you got some
I
awards
think
for
they
it
just
though, right?
compiled the script at the end. Uh, we got no, not really. We got like a Golden Globe for Stallone,
Okay.
and Mike got an award for acting. I can't remember from what organization. And then we got that was that was pretty much it. And then the Oscar nomination for Stallone.
Got it. Okay. I thought there was some sort of writing award in there too, as there should have been.
Just the hearts and minds of screenwriters and teachers everywhere.
So this is
Now
all
she was always the idea for Apollo's widow and Creed's mom. Like at the very, very beginning. Ryan was like, man, I think Felicia was shot.
that's
So
cool.
we were glad that worked out. Yeah.
Was she at the
This was
same
all
agency? Was
shot.
that easy enough or
Yeah. Say
cool.
that
Sorry,
again.
what were you saying?
I said this was all shot in Atlanta, I believe, not in Philly because it was just later.
How much of the movie was shot in Atlanta versus Philly?
Only this
Only
and maybe
this.
one other,
Okay.
maybe
Got it.
some other pickups that aren't really distinct, you know. But this was the only whole scene. Everything else was in Philly. Even the LA stuff was in Philadelphia.
Interesting. That's cool that they were able to do everything like on site in Philly for the most part.
Yeah, just a shout out to a great location scouting team
That's
because
cool.
the house that they live in that we found later was pretty far, like in the burbs, you know, but it was a great location. And same for the cemetery. We were all over like that part of that state to make it look real, make it look authentic.
How often were you on set during the process?
I was in set for the entirety of the Philadelphia shoot.
That's so cool,
So
dude.
I
That's amazing.
think we shot 47 days, I want to say, from I think February to March. So yeah, we were all in Philadelphia that entire time.
This is a wild story for kind of how this came to be. I mean, the fact that like you guys were in school, you had this idea and like ended up like becoming this massive thing. And like you as like the writer are like not only a massive part of it, but like you're welcome on set for the entire shoot, which is not normal for a new writer, you know? It's pretty cool.
I wouldn't say welcome.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Ryan had to. He's kind of like, yeah, I need somebody on set. I need a, you know, it's kind of like he's out there on an island as a director, and there's all these different entities. But you know, we were the caretakers of the story. So he was like, it would be really nice. And then he was like, no, I'm just saying it would be really, really nice. And for a while, it was even like, man, am I, you know, we're gonna have to find my own way to be out there, or how are we gonna work it out? But you know, it ended up working out. Ended up working out, and and everybody was cool with me on set. Nobody was like, you know, always up
Titles.
how this intro comes up. Yeah, the
Yeah.
title cards. But yeah, all the
That's
producers, once we were on set and started, everybody was really like, really we were all on the same team, I would say.
That's awesome. I mean, that's also like, isn't that the story behind like, I mean, often, not always, obviously, but a lot of like the best movies, I feel like that's what you hear is everybody's like in it together, really trying to make the same movie. Like they're on the same page with stuff.
Yeah. Shooting in Philly was such a big boost for us because that's a really strong film community that they don't always have consistent work like they deserve for, any number of reasons. And it being in a Rocky franchise and Stallone was on set a lot, obviously, because he's in the movie a lot. So there was a lot of just general excitement about it. And once people got to know us, people got to know Ryan and how he leads, it was really like something that I think people that worked on it, it's one of the shoots that they'll still remember.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
We're on
Awesome.
Mike's back.
Cool. All right. Let's give this a shot. Thanks, dude. Um, all right. So Aaron dropped his connection. He has shifted or shifted locations, and now we're going to try this again, starting at the 6:15 timestamp on Mike's back. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, cool.
Okay.
I think what I was asking, like right before we dropped off, I was curious, like because you guys came up with this idea as students, and like you did so much work on it, and then suddenly it became a real thing. Were you like obviously it would have been a wild experience anyway, but were you starstruck at all suddenly when you're like, you're going from having the idea of doing this thing based on like Stallone's story to actually working with him? Was that a big deal, or was it kind of like it just felt natural and you flowed right into it?
Um, a little bit of both, but there's definitely an intimidation factor. Um, just working with people so experienced in a property so beloved and classic to the medium. So, but um, the more you see, you're working with these people every day, or you're in the emails. It's like, okay, the first time you're like, okay, yeah, okay, yes, sir, or how do you want it, or this is what we think, and the second time it's like, how you doing? What's up?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
just quickly becomes, um, it quickly falls out of that awe feeling.
Cool. Yeah, which is kind of what I would
And then,
have expected, but it's just such an interesting thing for you to be kind of planning on it before it became a thing. It's pretty cool.
yeah. Well, now with like the stunt lists and stuff, people are like writing IP things
Yeah.
just, for spec. That's like the normal thing now. But
Wasn't
we
normal
were
then
kind of
though.
laughing about it. No, and people, even we had friends that were like, man, I don't know if you guys should write that. That's a waste of time. We were like, but it's just a good boxing story. We want to
Dude,
do a
I would have
boxing
told you
story.
you were
So
crazy. I would have told you you're
yeah,
crazy for doing it. And obviously it was a great decision. And it could not have worked out better. And I have a
right.
friend who I've become friends with since who's got a similar thing going based on IP right now, and it's turned into this huge thing for him. So I don't know, man. The William Goldman quote holds true. Nobody knows anything, right? Like, I mean, this worked out
Right.
amazingly well.
Exactly.
Pretty cool.
That's sometimes when people ask for advice, I'm like, you got to just keep moving. That's really the only advice. It's like, don't stop. Somebody's like, should I write this IP? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. You don't control it just as long as you know you don't control it. Like it's going to
Yeah.
be a process,
I mean, and
but
there's something to be
all
said
writing
because,
is a sample.
yeah, right. And like so much stuff doesn't get made anyway, right? Like, even if I do own it, like I've got half a dozen scripts that I know will never see the light of day. And I've got half a dozen more that, like, maybe, like, so it's tough out there.
Right.
And so,
It's
yeah, no,
tough.
it's super cool. All right. So he's watching
This was
Rocky
incredible.
now.
This was
What's
incredibly
that?
tough to shoot. This was really tough to shoot, like on set, to get at the time. Maybe it's easier now. People have more technologies, but there was a lot of work to get the screen and to get Mike on the screen. Like we were there all day to get this shot in this one apartment. It might even had to be 2 days because it was just like a technical challenge
It was such a cool
for
idea
some
though,
reason.
like, and I never even thought about it until right now, but like the choice to have it be a projector screen so that it's like over Mike's body and he's really immersed in it. Was that how early on did you make that choice?
Well, part of that choice, it was pretty early because we knew we wanted him mimicking the fights. We also wanted to show that this is a kid with money. Poor people, kids struggling don't have projector screen. So
Yeah,
it was kind of tied into both of those decisions
that's
to
cool.
say, how do we show his apartment? And we're not going to be there that much in LA, but show that he's a kid that's like, silver spoon, that's what they call him here. And that he's doing this for an internal struggle, not because he needs the money or anything.
That's super cool. I mean, that's
Wood
also kind
Harris
of
came in for 3 days. He was great.
it's awesome.
Avon Barksdale.
You had him for 3 days?
Yeah, he was only there for a short amount of time. I think we were in this gym 2 or 3 days, and then uh I think he came back for another scene that maybe got cut. But yeah, he wasn't in that much. But he came, brought a lot of energy, really
Right.
professional. This was also pretty early in the shoot. This was like I want to say the first week, first or second week.
Really?
So it was good. It was good for Mike to work out the boxing choreography on a smaller, with this scene first before we got into like
Yeah,
the
because like
bigger
if you're talking about
bigger
47,
bigger fight
sorry, go
scenes.
ahead. Yeah,
That's
because
it.
like 47 day shoot, right? Like, so he's probably not involved in pre-production for that long, right? So there's probably not a lot of tons of training that's paid for in advance and stuff like that, I would assume. Is that correct? Or
I'm actually not sure like when he started, um, and when because he did Fantastic Four before this. I don't know when that ended and it started.
Mhm.
My my guess from what I remember is like at least 6 months of physical training in terms of getting his body right first and getting his boxing skills to look,
Wow, that is a fair bit
you
then.
know,
That's cool.
yeah. And of course, his trainer was on set the whole time preparing meals and things, and our stunt guys and fight coordinators were like guys with a lot of fight experience in multiple, martial arts and fighting. So we had a real crew dedicate like that knew what they were doing. And
So
then like all the other boxers are real boxers, so that helped too.
so his own like his trainer was the one that was preparing his meals. It wasn't like part of craft services or anything, just because like it had to kind of keep
Um,
everything perfect.
I don't know if the trainer was preparing them or just kind of keeping them, but it was definitely like a separate meal service that he had
Yeah,
to eat,
interesting.
just like broccoli and chicken, and you
Just
know
stay
what I mean.
ripped
He
the
was
entire
he was,
time. Yeah, interesting.
and the way we shot it was the boxing scenes were the first half of the shoot. So, and then the scenes with Tessa and the scenes like with Rocky at home. And I think even these scenes were like the second half of the shoot. So we almost had two shoots, like a boxing movie for 25 days and then like an indie drama for 25 days. So for the first month or
That's
so, he was
interesting.
really on this diet and staying cut. And then as soon as we finished the last boxing scene, I remember it was like, yo, get Mike a cheesesteak. This man is
That's
hungry. He's
awesome.
been eating
That's
broccoli and
awesome.
chicken for a month.
That must have been a celebratory moment for him.
I'm sure it was.
If there are like parts that you remember as being like a specific part of the original pitch, I'd love to hear you like call that out. Like I'm curious about like the development of it.
Hmm. Well, like the original treatment is pretty much the same story. I mean, like this specific set of change, but all of that, him quitting his job. Well, the first fight scene in Mexico was like we were like bare knuckle brawling outside, and that kind of became something a little more organized
Hmm.
in the final script because I think studio concerns and logistic concerns and just like what are we saying if he's backyard brawling? That's kind of a different story, maybe. But him leaving his job and telling telling his adoptive mother this is all straight line.
That's cool.
Him coming and looking at the statue is very it's something we knew we needed in the movie. So we spent a couple days shooting different things at the statue. Like this scene and then the final scene were like the same day. So
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to bring all that like iconic, like, imagery in. And
yeah. Here at the restaurant was interesting just to think about. I don't know if it was like it was. I feel like there was some debate on if he still had the restaurant or not, but I think it worked out as this being a place where you could find Rocky, rather than like the restaurant closed and he's doing something else.
yeah.
I feel like there was a conversation about that. I can't remember. Maybe it was just me and Ryan in the ideation stage, but it just made so much sense for him to be able to come here and talk to Rocky and kind of invade Rocky's space in a way. And
Yeah, it
from a
lets you do.
screenwriting perspective, it's really like inciting incident. Like this is the first confrontation, first collision.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like if you go back to like kind of like typical hero's journey, save the cat, whatever, right? Like so it's like usually like your protagonist is the one that kind of resists the call to action, right? But here, like we got Rocky doing the same thing, you know? So
Yeah.
like he's also offering that same resistance, which works really well. And I think almost kind of plays a little bit against expectation and it works and just kind of it really it brings you in, right? Like because it's like now like you want him to go after it and get Rocky on board with him.
Yeah. It juggles the that screenwriting thing because it's like, oh, this is Adonis's movie, but it's Rocky's franchise, right? So in a way, no matter what, who is the main character? And this is very much a two-hander in
Yeah.
that sense, just
Yeah.
because of the legacy of it. So that's why it works where Rocky's like, well, I don't know, man. And Adonis is like driving, like, we have to do this. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. I mean,
tying them both with an arc in that.
it's funny. Like, I don't know why it never occurred to me that this is a two-hander, but obviously it is structured that way. Um, Probably just because it's titled Creed. Like, so in my mind, it's like clearly he's the protagonist, but yeah, it's very much like got a movie mentality to it in some ways. And like, they're in it together.
Yeah. It was always tough to decide how to address Rocky Four, basically. Um, and I think this was kind of the best, kind of subtle way without leaning into it too much and saying like, "Oh, Apollo died in the ring," because kind of being heavy-handed with it. He was just like, "I was there. I should have stopped the fight," and then we kind of, leave it alone after that for the most part,
I think it works really
because
well.
that's not what this movie is. If it was a TV show, I think you'd come back to it and revisit it, but it's like, and Adonis is like 30, so you feel like, he's come to terms with it a little bit, and he's really just like, this is my last chance to do this thing.
Yeah. The other nice thing about the restaurant location is just
Yeah.
it's such a clean way to like get a lot of like useful exposition across sort of visually through like the pictures because but like in a way that doesn't feel heavy-handed. Like it's not like we're waking up in somebody's room and like panning across a bunch of pictures. Like they would naturally be there in this restaurant, and so it's a clean way to do that.
Yeah. It's also kind of like Rocky is trapped by his success in a way, not necessarily like in a bad way, but he has to live around all of his memories. So at the restaurant, if you're famous, you can't have a restaurant that doesn't have your fame as part of the restaurant, you know?
Right.
And so this part with um Pretty Ricky was the Showtime 24/7 was big at this point.
Hmm.
2014, 2013, when we wrote it. They were doing these for like every big fight. Um, Floyd Mayweather's big fights and Manny Pacquiao's big fights. They would have these 4 episodes, little series leading up to the fights. So that's why we did this. We just copied that real thing.
Yeah, it makes sense to have it in there. It's good timing
And
for it too.
both of the fighters were so familiar with it too. They had done things like this. They had watched those shows, so it was really easy to get
Oh,
them.
all right. Brief interruption. Anybody watching? We're at 21:45 right now on the HBO Sports spot. 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, you know, you guys were in school and you were writing this. Were both of you boxing fans? Like, where did this come from? Was it about the franchise, or was it about your personal relationship to boxing? Both.
It was really, I know Ryan had always wanted to shoot a boxing movie, and he had done a cinematography project at a boxing ring.
Hmm.
And the tie was really more about aging heroes. So dealing with like our fathers, our coaches, our mentors, kind of being on the other side of life in a way, hitting 50s and 60s, and then just relating that, and that just sparked something about Rocky being old, and
That's
then
cool.
it kind of just came. It's like, man, what if we put it together? Ryan was like, I kind of got this idea if like Rocky was a trainer, like Rocky was training Apollos. So I was like, man, I think that's tight. He was like, do you want to, see if we can figure this out? And that's literally how it happened. It was like
That's awesome.
we were at like the cafe near campus, Subway or something. And he was like, I kind of got this idea, man. We should write something together. I was like, yeah, of course, 100%. He's like, man, I think it's something like with Rocky. He's like, did you watch Rocky? I was like, yeah, I love Rocky. I grew up in the Midwest. Like something like Rocky is, ingrained in the DNA. He was like, yeah, so Rocky's a trainer, and it's like Apollo's son or grandson or son or something. I was like, it just kind of sparked something in me. So we didn't have to talk much more about whether it was a good idea at that point. We were both just like, let's try and figure it out because it would also just be cool. It's like, how do we do a boxing movie? Then we're starting from scratch in something that, sports movies can always be tough to get ahead for, even though people like sports movies, but they don't, there's not always a market for sports movies, or you got to have just the right pitch, the right timing. Everything has to
Yeah.
be right for sports movies to play.
So I guess like
And then I
to say
immediately, once
that,
we talked about that, I was like, well, who's the Adrian in the movie, and obviously she's coming up in a little bit.
yeah. It's interesting. I just watched Rocky for the first time with my son, who's 13, the other night. He's been asking to watch it for a few weeks, and I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna interview Aaron soon anyway. It'd be fun to revisit it because I haven't seen Rocky in years. It was really fun. It's like crazy how well that movie still holds up. You know what I mean? Like, and that
Yeah.
well enough that like my son had heard about it from his friends and been like, I want to watch this. You know what I mean? It's cool.
Yeah, just keeping it really like the original Rocky is just such a just a person to person story. And there's such kind of abnormal characters, but there's just so much heart in it. You know, they want really simple things in the you know, and I think that's why it endures.
Definitely.
Um,
So this was like everything with her you had figured out in the original treatment as well.
yeah,
Just kind of thinking of like who's the Adrian going to be.
yeah. And what their relationship was. So when I brought it up, we were talking like, who was the Adrian? Who was, what's the love interest? He's got to. This just has to exist. It's part of the franchise. It's part of the trope. And then it was definitely Ryan's idea first for her to be a singer, and then we just kind of developed from there. This is a style of music that's still popular, but that was really popular at the time, or like really growing at the time. This particular style of R&B, and Tessa was making music like she made these songs with Ludwig.
Did she?
Anyway, like she made like a
That's
handful of
cool.
songs, yeah. And this extra here next to him, the lady, she was so funny. She was just having a grand time that day on set. Anyway,
No, that's cool. Like those,
um,
it's fun to hear about that stuff. It's great.
yeah. Oh yeah, that scene was the other scene with Harris was in the weigh-in. So he came for that day too.
Man,
Yeah, so this snow was all real. Not that people thought we had fake snow, but this was like the worst snowstorm in Philly in like a decade while we were shooting. So
oh, if it was that bad, then they
um
did a lot of, they had to clear a lot, I imagine, for this then, huh?
I, I think this was just at like a couple weeks after, so a lot
Okay.
of it had melted, but there
Got
was a
it.
time early on in February where it was like I think we lost a couple days of shooting and we couldn't leave the hotel. It was just awful.
That's rough.
So we really paid our dues with this movie.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
this
you
was
said
later because this was the second half when we were done doing all the fighting scenes. This was the fun part.
this is when you were shooting the indie movie.
Yeah.
So do you say you had more fun shooting these scenes than all the fighting ones?
Yeah. It was like just less stressful, just less
Yeah.
stressful.
Uh,
The fighting scenes we had like a ton of extras in all of them. Yeah, just a lot of logistical things and shooting the fighting scenes is such a technical thing. It's a lot more tedious than just like Rocky and Mike, two charismatic, dope actors, kind of just chatting with like minimal background stuff going on.
that makes perfect sense, actually.
Let me look at these questions. Yeah, as I'm watching this scene, I really remember like this day a lot, maybe more than some of the ones we've seen before. I feel like maybe this was maybe obviously not Stallone's first day on set, but maybe his first day in this part of it. We had people like lining up across the street. So he would come and like take pictures with people.
That's
And then we'd
cool.
be like, you guys got to be quiet while we shoot. And so he, obviously he's a celebrity wherever he goes. And this shoot was like really under the radar. People knew about it, but it wasn't like we weren't really being hounded. There was a little paparazzi, but it wasn't crazy. But this was a day, I feel like this was this day that I remember where people were like, "Hey, Rocky, can we get a pic?" Like a dozen people or so
Like
trying to
what,
see
in the middle of
Stallone.
takes and stuff like that, or
Yeah,
that's
yes.
a pain. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Is like Philly's not really a movie town, so like you can shoot something there with big stars, and like it's not necessarily you're not necessarily going to have the same amount of people like hounding you and finding you and everything. I mean, it's kind of like that out here. Like we have a lot shoot because I live in Massachusetts. We have a lot that shoots in Massachusetts, but it's
Mm.
kind of the same
Oh,
thing where a lot of
sure.
it does fly under the radar.
Yeah, people aren't like reading the trades or
Yeah,
have connections to TMZ, so consistently, constantly.
totally.
And also, if you're not shooting at this point, if it's not a superhero movie or something like that, there's a little less intensity around it.
We did have Madam Web shoot out here. That was it.
Oh
I
yeah,
think that yeah. But I don't know how much people even cared about it at that stage.
right. Yeah, her being losing her hearing was something because Ryan's wife used to do sign language interpreting like as a career. So we just wanted more specific touches with her that were unique and that felt
It's great.
personal to us. So if we wanted to put some sign language in the movie, and I think it does raise some awareness to that, and also gives her character some some specifics.
It definitely does. I mean, that's one thing that I think this movie actually does better than the original Rocky, which is, sort of in line with the times, but and I might not have noticed as much if I hadn't been watching it with my 13-year-old, right? But like it's like with Adrian, Rocky is like super pushy with her in a way that is not like comfortable, when watching it with my 13-year-old. And I have to be like, just so you know, it's never going to be okay for you to like push the door closed on a woman to keep her inside. You know what I mean? And like,
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
didn't, like the treatment of the Adrian character, in some ways, she still had a lot of depth and she was interesting. But like, I do think that like Creed does that much better.
yeah. I remember shooting this. This is at actually I don't remember which restaurant this was at, but shooting in small spaces is always just a challenge. I don't know how much people want to talk about that, but I remember listening to commentaries, and sometimes it's just like, what are the realities of set at a time? And this is a small booth. I think we didn't move the seats to get these shots right here where they're face
Mhm.
on the characters, but it was very difficult um, just to shoot in small spaces. The cameras are
So,
big. I think we had two cameras, but I think in scenes like this we couldn't fit both in to the aisles to shoot. Or maybe we did for these over the shoulders, but not on the straight on. So it's just a challenge. It's just a challenge.
it
And
all adds up
shout out
for
to actors.
time.
People think how I don't know what people think about acting, but it takes a lot of patience and a lot of resilience to stay and get and leave and get in character. And then there's like a technical thing, and it's like we got to send actors back and fix this. So then the actors go away for a half hour, got to come back and get right back in the moment. Like that's not easy.
It's not. It's not. My first time ever being on a real set was for my movie that shot 2 years ago, and it was like it was just kind of a really interesting thing to be there and like kind of absorb everything and be like, okay, this is why I'm not an actor, and this is why I'm not, a production designer or a DP.
Yeah,
It's just like really, it's cool to watch people at the absolute height of their craft, practice it.
yeah. And like same for me because I'm on set. I'm in video village. I got my headphones on. I'm like, oh wait, we're not shooting. We started shooting and then we had to reset. And I'm like dozing off. I'm like, oh man, this is I'm not gonna make it through the day.
It's long days, man. Writers don't usually
On
have
days like
to
this, like
handle that.
right, days like this, Rocky's on the in the cemetery. It's just one guy shooting. Like this was an easier shoot because we're outside, so there's a ton of light. We didn't have to do too much extra lighting. They hang up some dimmers so that it's not too harsh on him. But it's interesting to watch an actor. It's just like he's like, "What do you want me to do?" He's like, "I could do this. I got a newspaper. I brought this paper. I'll do something with the hat." It's just you're trying to figure out things to keep it interesting, and you shoot way more than you need in a scene like this.
Hmm.
And when you write it, you kind of write a lot less than you need because you don't. But then when you get there, you're like, "We can't just do 2 lines." And you're like, "Yeah, you're right. We need a little more."
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so Stallone is like, "Yeah,
you're
I'll
gonna
talk
bog
to
down the
her."
script. If you put all
Yeah,
those details into the script, you're gonna bog down the script, and the actor might still come up with something better anyway, on the day.
yeah,
So like you got to
yeah.
keep it flowing. Like you need some detail to like give it character, but no, it makes sense. That's cool to talk
I,
about, like how he's just like, and he's been doing it so long, like he's probably got a billion ideas of how he can approach that and make it work that are really useful and helpful.
yeah. And however many takes it was, I don't think it was too many, but he said something different every time. You know,
That's cool.
so and these are all like Stallone's actual people. His brother, I think, is in there, maybe.
That's cool.
But yeah, he was like, you got to get you got to get my friends in here. They've been with me, since the beginning. I feel bad. I don't know who all
I
those
love that.
guys are specifically, but I know they're all like important to Stallone and to the franchise.
I love hearing that. That's cool. That's really fun. Did you and Ryan kind of do anything similar where like you brought anybody or anything like specifically personal to you into the movie, just kind of as like a little fun reference for yourself and your friends, or
Mm, there's a part at the end when he punches the rapper guy. I'm I was in that scene, but I was never like in camera. I was one of the security guards, but I was
Hmm.
never like in the shot. So that's like the closest thing that I think we had that was similar to that.
I had both of my kids' names in my movie. Those unfortunately got cut, but I did name a couple characters after like good writer friends of mine. And they made it into the
Hmm.
movie. It was kind of fun. So
That's cool. That's real cool. And this is really following the trope of like you see how nice this gym is. It's really setting you up for when they go to the grimy gym later, the like city gym. So it's like, look how nice this is. The ring is nice in the middle. Big Stallone. Again, he can't escape his own legacy. It's everywhere he turns for Rocky. And because Rocky's legacy is everywhere, then Apollo's legacy is everywhere for Creed, subconsciously. So we're really just setting up for what's coming right here when they kind of go when they go to the other gym and
that's cool. And I'm sure you were
have to
actually
really go
thinking
like
about that at the script
underground.
stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
And this
chicken thing
too
is
is like
hilarious to me.
this. Yeah. This is also the setup for the real montage. It's like, yeah, we got a little montage here. He's got it. he's got to learn the ropes. He's got to learn some boxing. But you know, there's a Rocky classic montage coming later,
Oh
and
yeah.
this is just a warm
Yep.
up.
You gotta have it, man. I think like if you didn't have that montage, you'd have a lot of really disappointed fans.
Right.
You do have to like whether it's like a franchise or a genre, like to some degree, it's important to know the movie that you're making. You got to pay fan service, like like you can
Yeah,
play on, you can do new things with the tropes and that are exciting and different and like, and play against expectation, but you gotta like give the fans what they want too.
definitely.
So did the chickens that come from somewhere in particular, or like it's just like such an interesting if I don't know. I don't remember chickens from any other Rocky movie.
No, yeah, and one of the early ones he was chasing chickens.
Was
I
he?
don't think
All
it
right.
was one though. I think it was two, maybe. Actually, I can't remember exactly right now, but yeah, it it must have been two because Mickey was still part of it.
You guys probably researched the hell out of those movies, huh?
Yeah, we definitely watched them a couple times.
So how much writing had you done before this?
Um, Professionally, this was my first writing project. Before it was just so yeah. Film school is interesting because it's such a focus on there's such a focus on shorts when you're in
Yeah.
school. Um, so you kind of have to you just have to do writing on your own. You just have to be dedicated and focused on like, okay, I want to write, I need to get some TV specs, I need to get feature specs. So I had maybe written three features before this. The first one obviously is
It's a good
just
amount.
awful,
Yeah.
barely finished. And then the next one I'm just, slowly getting better. But and then Ryan, I obviously had Fruitvale produced, and he had some good mentors and things from that. And I found at this point a strength that I really had and understood in writing was structure. So I feel like I really brought a lot of that to this film and how to place where to place the different scenes. Like when do we cut to him and Bianca? When do we cut back? And there's a couple scenes later that I just knew we needed, you know, um, to fill out the story. And I'll talk about those
Yeah, I want to hear
as we
all
get to
about
them.
that stuff.
So I would say one of the bigger challenges, like you mentioned, um, is so when you write versus what you see on screen, there's such a shorthand that you can do in movies that
Yeah.
it's hard to understand when you're just writing. So some of these scenes and him coming over and being like, "Hey, what do you weigh?" Like, I can't remember exactly, or if this is even the point, but scenes you tend to write, especially when you're early on in writing, you write more build up. Like, how do we make it so this feels earned? It's like, well, it's already earned. He's training, he's at the gym. Somebody just has the idea that they could fight. So it feels like a kind of a shorthand for him to be like, hey, what's how much you weigh? You know, it's like, okay, now we're jumping into something else. This is like the start of a new sequence. You
Yeah,
know,
that's cool.
he got Rocky on board, and so they're training, and now he's like, okay, even in the audience's mind, you're thinking, what's next? What's next?
So
And
it's
then you don't
cool
waste
because
a lot of
like
time building up to what's next. You just get to it. You're in a new sequence, you know?
I know exactly what you're talking about as a writer and like as an like a viewer of this, like that's just flowing right through me. I'm not even thinking about it in that sense. Because it's just so clean and subtle, but it does exactly what you said. Like
Yeah.
it's like okay, we're we've reached this milestone in the movie and now we're moving forward. That's cool. Thanks for
Yeah.
calling that out. By the way, we're at 5:45:37 for anybody watching along who has lost track of the timestamp.
And then this is like a complication for their relationship. Um, him leaving and him not telling her, you know, it kind of sets the stage that like what are his priorities? And,
Right.
you know, for her, if you're in her shoes, you're like, okay, are we hanging out or am I important to you? You know, Rocky Balboa, who's like a legend in this city, and I don't know anything about you really. So that, you know, when they have complications later, you, you can kind of realize that he just hasn't really been straightforward with her.
Yeah.
And we know why, because we're following him. So we're sympathetic to him. But deep down, you're also like, man, if I was her, I would be like, what's going on too, you know?
Yeah, and
Then you
that's
realize,
what's
well, maybe she, you know, she really likes him, you know. Go ahead.
and no, it's just great. Like, 'cause it's like you have to do that. Like, all the characters have to be like, as sometimes like other writers will say or whatever. Like, they got to be the protagonist of their own story, right? And like authentic to like who they are and how they're feeling, and like yeah, and from her perspective, that's got to be like, dude, what the fuck, like. So, and
Exactly.
it's clean, and it's planting the seeds for everything that's to come, which is going to add a lot of drama as we get further into the movie.
Uh-huh.
So is Stallone a guy who kind of tweaked a lot of his own dialogue just because he's been doing this for so long and he has his own voice, or did he kind of trust what you guys were putting down on the page and run with that for the most part?
I think he trusted it and he wanted to have his own thing.
Yeah.
So he definitely improvised a little and added his dialogue even before production. But he also, I feel like, really trusted what we had written and trusted Ryan as a director. So
It's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you would expect some improvising from an actor who's been doing it for that long. It just makes sense. But it's cool that there was that level of trust there as well.
yeah.
It's interesting to me to think about like the dynamics with Stallone, the fact that a lot of this matches your first treatment because that's I feel like a finished movie matching an early treatment is kind of rare. But I guess like if you got Stallone on board early and he is kind of the champion of this franchise anyway, like I guess like in a way like he was kind of there to protect and support that from the beginning anyway, huh?
Yeah, 100%.
Like I wonder if you guys got to avoid a lot of like the normal headaches that can come from the development process just with having lots of different voices involved because of that, you know?
Yeah, I think so. It was definitely like a rare situation. So
Yeah.
a lot of things happen that that wouldn't usually happen, I think. So yeah, now we're in a new world. And this is kind of like what you were saying before, where Adonis had to convince Rocky. This is kind of Rocky bringing Adonis along because he was like, why are we going to a new gym? Why I got to run at 5 in the morning along where are we going? So Adonis is
Right.
like, he's really the fish out of water now where, 10 minutes, 15 minutes ago, he was bringing Rocky along. And these are all real people in the boxing world. Uh, the guy holding the pads, who everybody calls Padman, he actually passed away a few years ago.
That's
So shout out, to him and his memory. He was a really real fun guy to have on set and to work with. The guy in the glasses, everybody calls Stitch. He's a real corner man. He's
that's cool.
works with the top fighters in the world. And the other guy, the young guy, is a guy that really makes gloves in real life, and he made the gloves for
Huh.
the movie.
No way. That's cool.
Yeah. And the training partner is this guy Malik Brazil. He's a comedian. He has a bunch of followers on Instagram now. You can find him, and he's really
What's his
funny.
name one more
Does some
time?
stand up. And Malik Brazil.
Malik Brazil. All right, cool. I'll have to check him out.
Yeah.
That's cool. And they're all Philly guys, or
Malik is not a Philly guy. He knew Mike's trainer brought him on because we just needed
Mhm.
a guy that knew some boxing. He used to do some boxing. So
Cool.
the other guys are guys that Stallone knew from the world of boxing. But Padman was a Philly guy. He lives in Philly and was training, working with fighters in Philly.
Got it.
So yeah, guys just kind of came from all over, man. Yeah, Stitch is like I think Stitch lives in Vegas and he is in the corner of a lot of the major fights you see even today. So this is another complication for Adonis where before the training was fun, it was just a little tiring. He had to learn some things, learn some new things, but now it's like the training for a fight, so things are a little more serious, and there's things he hasn't had the formal training, so he's struggling in the ring, and now he's like struggling with the combos and like the technical things. It's like this is what it takes to really be a professional, not just somebody having fun. This is what you wanted, right? This is what it takes.
That's, do you ever so it's interesting. This is what it takes to be a professional. This is what it takes. Yeah, this is what you wanted. Do you ever feel any parallels with that as a writer? Like in terms
Yeah,
of like just like
definitely.
the challenges of the business and everything, like right now it's kind of like I don't know, for me because it's newer to me, like being on the professional side, like I feel a lot of that, and I have to constantly remind myself like, wait a minute, no, I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. I got to stick
Right.
with it, you know.
And there's always a few things that you just can't know until you uh, uh, that you learn as you make progress. So, sometimes it's something technical, sometimes it's something professional, sometimes it's just managing your time. And so you
Yeah,
just have to learn those things as you go along.
no question. So this guy's not actually a professional actor. He's in the boxing world.
No, this guy is a professional
Oh,
actor.
I was gonna say
This
he's
guy
like
is.
he's
Yeah.
good. Like, okay,
No, no.
that makes sense.
I, I don't remember his name right now. He's in a bunch of stuff. He's in a bunch of stuff.
Got it.
I'll try to point out the non-pros as we go along here. Yeah, the guy he's hitting the pads with, that's Pad Man. He's not an actor.
Yeah. Okay.
This guy doing this is actual real. This is Stitch. He's not an actor. He's a real boxing corner man, that man. And then Bianca's there, so you just figured that he told her, you know, I need somebody in my corner. They're still seeing each other, so their relationship continues.
Yeah, and it's like you don't need to explain that either. Like, the audience, you can trust the audience to fill that in, right? Like,
This was a funny thing because it was like usually guys throw up before a fight, or in movies, it's like, oh, you throw up before the thing. I was like, man, sometimes the stomach is working in a different way. So we made it. we made it this.
I mean, it's
Just
good
kind
too
of a
because like
funny,
now there's less time because they got to get the gloves back on and all that, right? So it
kind
just
of a
adds
funny
like
thing to
just
cut
a
the
little layer of
tension.
tension. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Of course, this is the classic oneer that people love to talk about. So this was actually the first day Sylvester Stallone was on set, I believe.
Interesting.
So this was early, maybe in the second week, second or third week. So it was a big deal, and obviously this crowd of extras is there, and people were cheering for him.
I bet. I mean,
It
for
was
a
it was
lot of those people,
electric.
like that's a story that they're still telling today. I got to be an extra, like on Creed with Stallone. That's cool.
Yeah. And then so this oneer was like, I don't know, 10, 11 takes. And
Wow.
so people were getting
These
really
dudes must
tired,
have been
obviously.
smoked. Yeah. I mean, it's such a physical thing to
But the
have to do for
last
10,
take is
11, 6.
whatever Ryan was seeing, he got it right on the last take. The last take is the one is the one that we're watching.
It's awesome.
So took a long time and everybody was definitely exhausted. But again, a testament to actors who keep their energy up and, find ways to channel that emotion,
It's great.
doing a 3-minute scene, however long this is, just back to back to back. But this guy is not or wasn't an actor at the time. I don't know if he did some acting after this, but this is a real fighter.
Yeah, I mean, he's
The
got to
ref
be,
is a
right?
real ref. Yeah.
That's cool. It must have been interesting for a real fighter though to have to learn how to like, do all like the stunt punches and pulling everything, right? Like
Yeah, I'm sure it was a challenge.
it's crazy to me that those dudes did 10 to 11 takes of that. Like that's tiring.
Yeah.
He must have been smoked
And this
after
was
that for
always
sure.
conceived as a oneer. You don't really write a oneer,
Hmm.
but since we were writing and Ryan was directing, he knew that this was a chance to make this fight a chance and a way to make this fight stand out. When we had a big fight coming later, it's like, how do you make this fight special in the story and visually, you know?
That's a cool thing to talk about too, right? Like when you're, especially in a sports movie, but really anything where like you have to repeat the same type of scene, like how do you avoid that feeling of redundancy? It's so you do have to think about that early.
Yeah. There's a lot of ADR in there too, I can tell.
I didn't even pick up on it. It's pretty clean. Makes sense. Now I'm picking up on
And
it
she
now that
pushed
I'm
him. That
paying
was,
attention for it.
yeah.
But I
Her
probably wouldn't have
push on
otherwise.
Adonis,
Yep.
that was the only time she pushed him like that too. I think that was just like the magic of the last take.
It's such a good moment too. Like there's just so much
Yeah.
character in that. It's great.
Yeah, I remember this. I never said this before, but one of the editors, after reading the script, he was like, "Man, I love that smash cut to Skyfall," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" Because the way he kept bringing it up, I'm like, "But it's such a small part of the movie." He just thought it was really funny. And I was like, "Man," I was like, "I
It's
don't. We don't
funny.
need. Do we know it's going to be Skyfall? But it's an MGM property, so you know they can make that happen."
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just like, "Why? Why do you keep bringing this up to me?" But it
It's
is a
very
really
funny.
abrupt, fun cut to them just, you know, kind of as a family. Um, you know, you always think what happens after somebody, does something like this, wins a fight, wins a match. It's like at some point you're just at home going to bed, you know.
It's true, man. Everybody
And
who
then we
took
hadn't
home
seen
an
them
Oscar
bond
a
in a
couple weeks
while.
ago, they went home, So what's
They went
that?
home, got some
Yep.
food, and went to sleep. We hadn't really seen them bond in a while, but we saw her at the fight, so this is like more relationship building.
It's a nice visual way to do it too, like sharing headphones or the earbuds, like just like little
Yeah.
subtle thing.
And then yeah, these scenes, you got to have them in the movies.
Yeah, I mean
But this
it's
time, I don't know.
part of the structure, dude. So it's
Yeah.
and it's part of the heart of it.
And it lets you know that their relationship is serious, that they've, really bonded and they're really like in tune with each other, so that whatever happens to him later or to her, you feel really intertwined with it. You feel an emotional connection to it, which happens right here, actually. He won this fight. They just wake up and make some eggs, make some fried eggs on the stove in Rocky's little apartment. And then, she changes. And like, we don't know what's going on yet.
It's a good cut.
Yeah. And now we address like kind of the elephant in the room, but just, the whole name thing is kind of drives the next couple sequences.
Was that challenging to write, to like figure out how to um make it like feel emotionally authentic, like that he rejected the name and then like came around it to embrace it? Because like it's so important to kind of making the concept work on an emotional level, and I feel like that would have been like, it's kind of like it's a little bit of a tightrope act. Like it would be really easy to make that feel heavy-handed, I think, and like not buy into it.
Yeah, it's definitely something that takes a few revisions,
Yeah.
um, just to kind of hit it with nuance. I think there might be a couple other scenes that deal with it that were cut, where maybe him and Rocky are talking about it, or maybe he calls back home. I can't remember exactly, but those scenes weren't necessarily in the treatment, but they came out in writing the script, and then they got cut by the final movie. So, and it really is like, how much does an audience need? And you realize when you're watching it, you're like, okay, we don't need another scene explaining it. Like,
Yeah. No, that's
once
true.
she kind
I'm
of deals with it, we're kind of good with her, with the family aspect, or like him dealing with it, him talking to her. It's like, okay, his part of it, their part of it is done. Now we have to deal with the world recognizing it,
right.
the rest of the world. So yeah, she's pulled back into it. The mother figure. We haven't seen her for a while, but he called her earlier, and so he's trying to keep in touch a little bit, but he's doing his own thing, and then now she's like dragged back into it. And then it's like, what are the implications of this getting out? And that becomes the fight that we're gearing up for.
Yeah.
A hard thing to write is like Kornheiser and Wilbon here. Like, you don't really write those. You just kind of give them a topic, and they may ask a couple questions, and then they do their thing.
They riff.
And then the announcer commentary during the fight, like, you write a bunch of lines for that, but it's like you let professionals just be professionals at that point. That's what they do. You just kind of give them some guidelines and
Yeah, I
and
think that
and
makes
and
sense.
freedom. So I think this is like a saving the cat thing, with like the bad guys circle. And these aren't bad guys in a Marvel sense, but that's what this is. It's like the word got out about Creed. He needs a fight because the other guy broke his arm, which we saw earlier. So they have to circle around
Yeah, right. Isn't
our
there like,
hero.
I haven't read Save the Cat in forever. But I feel like, didn't he like call it like bad guys close in or something, like, or is that something else? It's somebody has
I think
bad
it
guys
is.
close in. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the fight that we just saw, that's like the midpoint. So
Mhm.
as we're coming out of the midpoint, which was a victory in this movie, things start crumbling around them. Like, that victory means it's not the full victory that he needs,
Right.
because he wasn't using the name, which is also the name of the movie. So now, to get his true victory, he has to, like, the name has to become a part of it.
Yeah, he has to own his identity, right?
Hmm.
What was, did you guys have a theme that you were specifically working with when you were writing this, or did it kind of present itself over time?
No, I don't. We didn't think about it like that at the time. No.
It's always interesting to me. Like I know a lot of writers who write where they never think about theme and just kind of let it do its thing, and like a lot of writers who prefer to write like knowing what the theme is from pretty early on.
Yeah.
And
No, we wrote more about the journey. We were thinking about his his journey to get where he ended up. Not even
mhm.
theme or even arcs necessarily, but the arc is obviously just kind of built in part of it.
Yeah,
But we were thinking about in terms of arc, like what would you know what were his challenges more you know mentally, philosophically, as somebody who wanted to kind of prove himself, but he keeps having to find help along the way in different ways. And how does he kind of self-sabotage, and he's kind of over eager, so how does he get his in his own way? But we also were like, this is a not a not a reckless guy. He's thoughtful, so that plays in more when when Rocky gets sick a little later and stuff.
That makes sense. It's cool that you're able to use the hearing thing, which was kind of something that you initially used to give her more depth as a way, like as a foil for him to talk about his fears.
Yeah, I can't remember how we talked about it exactly, but something about him being a fighter with the name thing and her being a singer with the hearing thing connected with us, because it was
Yeah.
like he can't quite achieve what he wants to because of this name, and she's going to have obstacles in her career because singing, you need to be able to hear, or that's how we think of singing, at least. So we did think about those parallels, and this is
That's
him
cool.
coming to terms with it, because we know he wants to fight. So it's like he just has to struggle with if this is a way he can do it, if this feels authentic to him. I think that's a big thing for this character, is doing things in a way that feels authentic.
That's a good moment. It's well delivered.
Yeah, this was a tough scene to shoot. We did it a couple. We did this a few takes too, and well, it goes a lot farther than we do in the movie, where he's like helping Rocky like out of the gym, and it's really intense. This was a really intense day of shooting.
So, what made it challenging to shoot in here?
Just the intensity of the moment, like Stallone being sick and him really like committing to this, and then like I think he collapses here. Yeah. So we would be like, Mike helps him up, and he's like yelling for help because the other guys just left. And he's like, I'm gonna get you out of here. I'm gonna get you out of here. So it just goes on a lot longer. And we did it, like 5 or 6 times. It just went on a lot longer. It was intense. And I think this was a point when, Stallone was really like just locked in for all these scenes of him being like sick. He was just really locked in.
That's cool.
I think the hardest part was the idea of like, are we building up to this being sick? It kind of just happens, but you accept it because he is an older man. But I think we had some ideas earlier where we kind of hint at it, but then it kind of felt like it felt a little too heavy-handed to keep hinting at him, like if he's coughing or sweating or something.
I think you made the right choice because it's like, how many movies have you seen where like the old dude coughs like, and then there's like blood from coughing or something, right? And it's like,
Right.
and you know what's coming, and like this kind of catches you off guard a little bit, and you don't need that setup, or nothing
Yeah.
heavy-handed anyway.
Yeah. And we
The
kind of wanted it to
setup
be
is
a
the
shock.
relationship, you know.
Right. Yeah. It works better as a shock, even to the audience, like, oh man, Rocky. And this is what we were, drew us to it. It's like, well, your heroes, your mentors get old, and then you one day you're taking them to the hospital, and you're like, oh wait, yeah, that's right. You're a 66-year-old man. You're a 70-year-old. You know, that's what happens. That's life, no matter how you lived it.
Yeah.
And this also shifts the movie back to Rocky a little bit. This whole sequence, so which is really just what the franchise demands.
Yeah. Had you thought about that at this point, or early on at the kind of at the treatment stage, or was that something that you kind of figured out you needed to do later on?
This was part of the original even idea. It's like,
Yeah.
what if Rocky's sick, like actually sick, or gets sick, or yeah.
And it
So we
works great
and
because
we had to do some research and kind of play with how what kind of sick we wanted him to be too. So, but that was part of the what what drew us into even this story.
that's cool. And you buy him being a guy who like is like, whatever, I'm not gonna worry about this. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. Like, I'm not gonna take any action. You totally buy that. And it
Yeah,
gives, it gives Adonis something that he can do as a result that kind of helps complete his arc. It's really good.
yeah. It definitely ties in with the cemetery scene earlier where his Adrian's gone, and we don't see his son in the movie, and he's kind of just like, I lived a great life, but I'm also in a lot of ways a lonely old man. And Adonis injects some energy into him, but he also can't escape his legacy, which I mentioned earlier. So he's kind of like, if I go, I go. I've done it all. And that's what drives a rift between him and Donnie right here. 'Cause he's like, you got one more thing to do, man. You can't, not dead yet. See, he said that there, I already had my career. I did okay.
Mhm. Which in a way is kind of relatable. Like, like I can buy that. I can buy somebody feeling that way. but you also
Yeah.
really appreciated Adonis like pushing, like, no, man, you got more.
Well, whenever, you talk, as people get older, it's just like, so I always wonder when people are like, I want to live forever. I'm like, have you ever met somebody in their 70s? They're not like, you know what I mean? Anybody I've met that's like 90 or older, you make it to 90. I've met a few people and that are like 90 or older, and they're just like, not sure why I'm still here, taking it a day at a time, but
When,
they're kind
yeah,
of
when
like
it happens,
okay
it
with
happens, you know? It's like, so
when it happens.
yeah, maybe it's because I'm a writer. I
Yeah.
don't
And
know,
so
but
this
I think
is
about that stuff all the time. Sorry, go ahead.
right. This is really when structurally is the stuff that we needed to tie the whole movie together, where they have a breakup and then there's a spiral after that breakup. So structurally, I really um feel good about this short section of the movie that ends with Adonis in jail. And this is showing like, you know, well, this is just a great scene from Stallone.
It is.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, because he's got such an action career behind him, people forget like how good of an actor Stallone is and like how much he brings to the table in that sense too.
For sure. Yeah. And so that's all just like the emotions of this kind of moment. Oh, that's Ludwig in the back, Oscar winner, Ludwig Göransson for
Oh, that's
Oppenheimer.
cool. That's awesome.
And yeah, he
Wait,
obviously did the music
was
to
he the
this. And
composer on this?
yeah,
I didn't
he's
even
done,
realize that.
I think he's in all of Ryan's movies. So, because
That's
Ludwig was
cool.
at USC, we knew him from USC. So,
That's cool.
and also Moses Sumney, who's the other artist in the room. He's a really good artist as well.
So I'm just gonna take a wild guess here, but I would say that you are on the side of going to film school is a good thing if you want a career in movies.
Um, I, no, not really. I don't think it's good or bad. You just have to make a choice. The the the, the world was also different in 2008 in terms of
Fair. Way
access and
different.
things.
Yeah.
And I still am paying student loans, so and even that world of student loans is a lot different in
It's
money or
so
not
different,
having
man.
money.
It's
Yeah,
scary having a 13-year-old right now. Like it's not that far away, man. So
yeah. How do you even think about it?
it's crazy.
So this scene, I, I feel like this scene is specifically wasn't in the treatment, but I knew that like we needed this jail scene. And then once I came up with it, actually I remember being I was working security at a bar before we were writing the movie, but after we knew we were gonna kind of knew we were gonna do it, it was gonna happen. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, we need a scene with a, you know, like this. And I told Ryan, and he was like, later he was like, yeah, we this scene is so important because it's a scene where Mike is really emotive, basically. And other than fighting, this is like the only time in the movie where he's like really, you know, going through a range of emotions. And after having Rocky seen, a scene in just over a scene ago, then this is their reconciliation and his growth.
Did you have something else in place that was kind of doing these things beforehand?
I can't remember exactly
Because it seems
what
so
like the
critical
transition.
to like the movie. It feels like the movie doesn't quite work without it, right? Like,
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what the transition out of or like the Dark Knight of the Soul kind of thing was in
sure,
the
yeah,
original treatment. Um, so yeah, can't quite remember. I just never could quite remember what it was, but I knew that this was what we needed.
yeah, good instinct for sure.
I think it was kind of just Rocky dealing with the cancer diagnosis, and then but I was like, yeah, we need a scene where Adonis goes through a dark moment as well. And so his breakup was Rocky, and now his breakup with Bianca because he started a fight at her big show. She's like, she's like, that actually really wasn't cool. So he had to face some consequences for that action.
For sure.
And it Rocky's sick. He's like, give me some sympathy. And so it was tough here to think about how this would end and if he would win her back, but it just didn't feel real for her to be like, I'm sorry, Rocky's sick. Let's be cool. It seemed like, and we were like, do we know any, you know what I mean? How would, women that we know react? They might have some sympathy for you in the moment, but, you know, there have to be consequences for,
For
for
sure.
your actions. And I remember the conversation we had for that line that she just gave, where it's like, how would they break up? It's like, well, we don't want her to be an asshole or him to be an asshole. So she's just like, you're busy and I'm busy. And then Ryan knew he wanted the hearing aid thing. She takes the hearing aids out. She can't hear him anymore. You know,
Great moment.
that's
Yeah,
her closing him out. Yeah.
it's great. I love it. And you said this came from somebody he knew who was a sign language interpreter. Is that right? Like
His wife.
his wife, and like so it's just kind of like we're like, oh, we could use that to give her more character, and like all these like really important moments and for the movie come out of that like kind of just little thing. It's cool.
Yeah. People really like this scene and this kid. And that's kind of just planning the bikes that we'll see later, you know?
That makes sense. Yeah. But it
Yeah.
adds a little bit of just I don't know, it makes the world feel lived in, like, you
Yeah.
know. So
Well, it's funny because the kid is like, "You're Apollo Creed's son." And he's like, "Yeah." So that's like a real shorthand to solve the whole conflict that these last couple sequences have been.
hmm,
He doesn't say, "Oh, you're the boxer dude." He doesn't say, "No, I'm my own man." He says, "Yeah." He just says, "Yeah, I'm Apollo Creed's son." And we keep it moving.
that's cool. So it's like which it's like the perfect timing because he's gone through that low point with both like the jail cell and then the breakup, right? And like now he's kind of forced to like
Yeah.
face the truth of things, and that now he's ready for Act Three.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll out a timestamp. We're at 1:32:09 for anybody watching along.
Yeah. If I fight, you fight. So now we're in a, it's funny, we're into Act Three, I believe, but we haven't even had we're gearing up for the big montage. This always felt real smart. Like, okay, you gotta. It's hard to do a new montage, you know. So we started in the hospital. That's something you've never seen before, you know. It also shows like dedication and no matter what the circumstances, if you have a goal, you have to find a way to keep working towards that goal. So you're in the hospital, he's doing treatments. You got to do some push-ups. You got to stay in shape. This fight is still happening.
My movie that got made, the opening scene in an earlier draft that ended up changing, but was him do the protagonist doing 100 push-ups in a hospital. So
Yeah,
just I don't know. There's something. It's really cool that you guys did that because like it does show like no matter what he's dedicated, right?
yeah. And it's interesting because this montage isn't just it's not gratuitous in any way really yet. It's 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 the training, it's the treatment. Rocky's still recovering and he's sick. The treatments are hard, but the bad guy's closing in. We're back to to who he has to fight, what he's going up against. Padman, the music is swelling.
It's amazing how effective these, you know, things are, right? Like it's just like it gets you so hyped for like what's to come. Like
Yeah.
you're pumped as a viewer to see this final fight.
Yeah. And now he's getting it, all the things he struggled with before.
You were helping
He's
him with
locked
those chin
in.
ups from below, weren't you? You were lifting him.
He was standing on my back. Yeah.
That's right. And so was this all shot earlier, or like along with
Yeah.
the fight stuff,
Yeah.
or
And then these was shot later. So the montage was like pieced together.
interesting? How much of that was actually written into the script versus like just kind of like Ryan knew what he wanted to get for shots?
Um, not scene for scene. The montage is not written like that. It's just kind of like you just say like um you do a couple and you just like montage Rocky going through treatments while Adonis trains while you know interior gym Ricky Conlon trains, and then we wrote this, and this was in the treatment too. This with the bike, so this was part of the visual like original idea.
I love it. It was a
And
great
this was
idea.
this
Sorry, go ahead.
right.
I mean, I just think it was
This
a
was
great
fun to shoot.
idea, like to do that because like it kind of it feels like this is a moment that is telling us, okay, this is a new franchise. Like, yeah, it's in the same world, but like now, like we're moving into like this is, Creed's franchise now, like it does feel like that. Like it separates it from Rocky in a way.
Definitely. This is a tough shoot day because you got all these bike guys and you got to be safety and the camera's on
Yeah.
somebody's car and there's a lot going on, but it was a fun day of shooting. Maybe fun 2 days, but whatever it was, it was just cool.
It's cool. Now, are those dudes all stunt guys professionally, or were they locals who were just really good on
Those were
on
all
their?
I think they were all local guys with
That's
bikes.
awesome. So cool.
They found these bikers and yeah. I don't know if we needed this scene so much, but it's such a part of boxing to have either a weigh-in or the press conference before.
Yeah, totally.
And we hadn't seen Ricky Conlon much yet. So this was a chance for him to do some acting and to do some antagonizing, so it
Especially
pays off in that way.
especially now in this in like the age of social media and stuff where like this stuff gets shared so much, right? Like it
Right.
makes sense to include it. So have we
And
reached
kind of just
one
reiterating, yeah.
what's
What were you
that?
saying?
I was gonna say, have we reached one of like the highlight moments for you already? Like, or are those to come?
No, definitely the sequences when Rocky tells him or he finds the pamphlets, that whole
Mhm.
sequence from Rocky and then breaking up. Oh, really the Dark Knight of the Soul stuff, all the breakup stuff, I feel like was the most personal stuff for me.
That's cool.
Um the most fun, like the biker scene was one of the most fun scenes to shoot and just be a part of. Um yeah. And we have all these scenes of preparation for the final fight. These were fine. But you can, at this point, even watching it now, I'm like, man, we got to get to that final fight. Let's get to that final fight. How much time is left in this movie? But there were still, loose ends to tie up, I guess.
Yeah. So do you think you would go back and try and tighten up the third act if you were going to do it again?
Uh, I I don't know. I don't know. I would I guess just in the edit, it's like, could you watch it? Could you cut out that press conference? Could you cut out this scene? But you need
I
to
mean, they
see
definitely
him reunite with Bianca.
got it.
But maybe it could have happened in a different way. I don't know. I think if you're doing it now, the press conference could happen like through interviews or an Instagram live or
Yeah.
a tweet or something. I don't know. There's other ways to visualize it, maybe.
I mean, I don't
That
know.
weren't
I
so
feel like it
popular in
works.
2014. Yeah.
But I guess traditionally it is kind of a long third act. So maybe. But I don't know. Like I feel like all those scenes are bringing something to the table and flowing perfectly fine.
Yeah. There's not a lot of waste. So
Yeah. Such a great moment here. It's so simple, but it's so effective. Like there's so much packed into that. It's great.
yeah. I think there was even some question about what shorts to use, but this was always the answer.
Mm.
It's interesting to do an IP because you don't just have to resolve conflicts and things in the movie. You have to resolve them with the history of the franchise.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what this is.
It's a lot
It's
of
like,
movies. You're not just working with like two or three either, you know?
yeah. And R.I.P. Carl Weathers, he passed away
Man, for
recently, but
real.
big part of this movie in a lot of ways, obviously.
It's funny, I'm realizing now everything suddenly looks all clean and bright again for the first time in a while, right? Like kind of matching the
Yeah.
way it looked in the first act. I don't think that ever occurred to me before.
And then when you think about it, like for Mike, this was a big part of the next decade of his life. I think they're doing a fourth one now, and
Are they really?
he directed the third
He
one. So
directed
it's
the
like,
third one.
yeah,
Yeah.
so this really launched like a major part of his life. Just like the first one did for Rocky. The rest of his life, is part of he was Rocky. So
Yeah, man. Like
did a
I
lot of
can't
other things too,
remember.
obviously, but
I've lost track of it, but like was he a big star before this movie or was this the one that launched him?
for Mike,
Yeah. I feel like it was this, right? Like wasn't this the one that
I mean,
really
this was definitely took him to another level, I think.
yeah.
But he was definitely like known and an actor and
I'm trying to
very
like
much
the
well
I
liked
lose track
before
of
the,
like the
he
order of what came out.
yeah, he was like on the verge and this took him there.
Yeah. Like this
But he had
made him
done
like a
Fantastic
star
Four and
star.
Red Tails, and
Yeah,
yeah, he was in The Wires, so he had a really
right.
good
That's
career
right.
before this.
Yeah.
But this was definitely the star turn.
And then
Yeah, now we're getting
obviously,
to it. I feel like it picks up really a lot here too.
totally. And
Just from the
Ryan
right.
ended up doing huge stuff with him afterward. Uh, but I'd love to hear about, how your career has gone since this.
Um,
Like how did this impact your career?
I mean, it's just likewise. Well, put me in the industry. I've
Yeah.
had a chance to do a lot of really fun projects and work on some really fun projects, even if they weren't my projects or weren't things I saw to the end. But I was able to work in video games. I did a NBA 2K17.
Did you? That's cool.
I did a couple issues of comics from Marvel, which was real fun, which was really just
That's cool.
gave me a taste of something. I'm trying to develop some more comic book ideas now, and I did some on-set writing for the new Space Jam movie they did. That was a lot of
Did you?
fun, and
Nice.
then I worked on briefly on Into the Spider-Verse, the first one with Miles Morales.
No
That was a great
shit.
project.
Man, that's such a great franchise. Last,
Yeah,
like,
that's
Across the Spider-Verse was really one of my top three or four favorite movies last year. It's just so good.
yeah, that was just a great learning experience, and definitely a project I
That's
remember
cool.
fondly, even though it was just a short time I was involved with that. And then I was writing on the show Grand Crew for NBC the last 2 years, and that was a lot of fun. A good friend of mine was a showrunner, and just a bunch of friends, young black friends who would gather at a wine bar to talk about their dating experiences and life. That was that was a real fun
That's
project.
cool. And were there like specific connections out of this movie that kind of led to some of those other things, or?
Um, Not really. Well, Space Jam, Ryan was producing that
Mhm.
with Spring Hill and LeBron's company, so he called me for that.
That's cool.
Other things, it was just kind of, people reaching out because of Creed or other other relationships, but relationships that happened post Creed.
How many extras did you have here? It looks massive.
Um, I have no idea. They did shoot. I mean, this is behind the scenes. They did go to London with a B camera crew sometime,
Hmm.
maybe after we were done, and they shot a bunch of audience scenes. So when they're up high in the audience, that was like a different event that they were like, we're
Got
gonna
it.
shoot some scenes for this movie. It's had a crew there. The people like around the ring that we saw this, maybe 500 or 1,000. I don't know. There's a
That's
lot
that's
for
that's a
sure.
lot. Yeah, man.
It was massive, but it's not 30,000.
Right.
It's not 30,000. But yeah, that ring was real. These people right here. Well, most of the people, when you see them holding like flags or something, those are from like a London soccer, thing or whatever. So, but all the people right around the ring are people in Philadelphia.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, just because it's a Rocky movie, that's how we get like Michael Buffer and Max Kellerman doing the announcing and the ESPN guys. Like, that's just not something you could do if it wasn't
Yeah, I imagine it'd be
a
pretty hard to
Rocky
get
movie
those
with
guys.
Stallone.
Yeah.
It's just, it's impossible. It has to be Stallone calling or MGM calling, like, we're doing a Rocky movie. We need, we need it to be like legit. Yeah, I don't know how many days it was to shoot this whole fight. I feel like it might have been 11 days of show or something like that because each round presents different challenges and there's a lot of shots to get. And it was definitely the biggest single chunk of the movie.
11 days is a lot. That's crazy, especially out of
I,
47.
that's the number that comes in my head. So I can't be 100% sure, but it seemed like it was that long.
Wow.
Even thinking back, it was like, oh, we're back at this location. We're still shooting this final fight.
Now, is this are the when it's closer up? Is this a stage or is this a was this all done actually like
No.
at a stadium?
Yeah, we rented out some arena
All right.
and they built this ring and we had two cameras. We had a camera op in the ring on a rig attached to his body that was just like he was just moving around with the fighters, dancing with them. And then we had these other cameras, the ESPN cameras. I feel like those I can't remember if those were actually running or not.
Hmm.
If they were just there for like if those are extras or if those are actual cameras. But I feel like we might have actually had three cameras for the fight. They might have brought in a third camera to cover all of this. But it was hard because when they're in the ring, a lot of those you can only use one camera
Right.
because he's moving with them. So, it was tough to manage too. All the stuff with like Max and man, I can't remember the other guy's name, but that stuff was shot pretty much at one time.
Mhm.
Maybe it was two sessions, but it's not like we shot this all like chronologically. We shot
Right.
maybe on one of the last couple days. Max came in and did it and did his whole thing for like an hour, a couple hours, whatever it was. And then they did a lot of ADR. Once once we knew how the edit looked and we knew the specific lines that they needed, they would just ADR it. And the fighting is tough because okay, so fight scenes are really tough to write, but they can be easy to conceptualize. But when you go to like screenwriting software, because it's the way it is, and you think about formatting and how it looks visually, but also trying to explain it all, but then you think about people's patience with reading it,
Yeah.
it's really tough to write. So I don't know how it looks in the final script, but I think a lot of that was put together after the movie was done because we definitely had a couple versions and some like really long-winded versions of like really written in more of a prose style, but it's harder to translate that for action scenes when you get
Well, yeah.
fight choreographers involved and all the people involved. It's like it has to be more of a feel to it.
Right. And those guys,
So
like, I mean, that's what they do. Like, they know how to like make that look good. And, so I mean, you got to write
exactly,
something that makes it feel like you're putting the reader in the movie and like so they can they can feel it and experience it, but like you can't bog them down with every single punch, especially not like in
right.
boxing where like they're like rapid fire.
So you really just write the
Like
emotion. Like round one, Creed comes out, but Colin's ready. Colin's the aggressor. And then you kind of move on to the next round, and then you're like, we write something in like that where like Creed walks to the wrong corner, and that makes the movie.
right.
But otherwise, it's like kind of broad strokes unless you do know exactly specifically what the fight is and it's really short and going to be quick cuts. You got to kind of write broad strokes, and then but I like that style because you want your fight guys to put their mark on the film,
Totally.
but it
And
does
like
make it
and
tough
that's
on
what
the.
they that's what
Yeah,
they
go
do
ahead.
well.
Exactly.
I mean, I was I like zoomed with this dude a while back who was like you know, the the stunt director for a couple of big Marvel movies, and like I was asking him like how much of this is you. And he's like, dude, so much of it is us because like, you don't really know what you have to work with until you're there on set anyway, so like you're making up a ton of
Right.
it. Like you take the script and kind of figure out what the sense of that is, but then you put something together working with the director. So, but I
Yeah.
have the script in front of me and like it does like list some of the punches and stuff like that. Um, but you said like some of that might have been put in after the fact.
Yeah. I think, they had somebody watch the film and write what happens
Interesting.
for the script that goes out for end of the year stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But they have our script and they copy and they copy and paste and it's just like what is actually ends up in the and then because the announcer stuff, the corner cut too when Rocky's talking to him, when he's talking to the corners, some of that all that stuff is shot out of sequence too.
Mm,
And some of it is even ad-libbed on set. So it kind of couldn't be in the script until we saw what makes the final edit. There's just a ton of footage to sift through.
sure. Yeah,
But
that
like
makes
when the
perfect
lights
sense.
cut, we knew that the lights would cut and then we'd be like in Adonis's with the ring with him. We knew that this slow motion, this speech was written, like most of it is there, but any fight or action sequence is also kind of a montage. So you just kind of collect as much as you can and then you shoot what you
Totally.
can.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much happening right here between like the punches, the announcers, Rocky,
Yeah.
everything. Um, yeah, the script that I have is September 30th, 14. So I don't know if that's what that was, like put together for the end of the year stuff or whatever. That's what it says on the cover page,
Okay.
though. Drafts 9/30/14.
Yeah. And that's he took a real punch there. That's kind of,
Did
you
he
can find it
really?
online, him and Stallone talking about that. Yeah. That's why
Oh,
whenever this
damn.
plays in the theater, people always go, oh,
It's
we had to
brutal.
like line up
Yeah.
this punch. Yeah. But this was written. I mean, we knew he would get knocked down and have these flashes. This was part of the idea.
But I'm assuming it was an accident that he took a real punch.
No, 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 no. That was part of the plan.
Oh, really?
Stallone told him you had to take a real
Shit.
punch. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Holy shit.
Search it on search on YouTube. Stallone is talking about it. So we actually set it up so he would really punch him. Not a full like hitting the rear back and cold cock him,
Even
but he really
so.
hit him. Hit him pretty hard. And Mike took it. I think we had to
That's
do it
wild
twice too.
too.
So Mike really took it, man.
That's wild too, because like you had so much shooting after this, like you couldn't have his face completely busted up.
Right. Mike really took the punch and we shot on a high speed. Like that slow motion was we brought in a
Mm.
camera for that slow motion. And this was all like part of the idea. We knew coming out of the 11th round, he's dazed, he might lose, so that he could have his speech before the final round.
Gotta have it. You need that moment.
This guy, the the pro boxers trainer, he has like a reality show. He's Scottish, and him and his son
Huh.
are like traveling the world, and it's really interesting. Graham Tavish, I think is his name.
That's cool.
So yeah, that music drop. I don't know. That was decided in the edit, but I didn't know about it until I saw it. Came to the editing room and saw it cut.
Oh, really?
You know, I wasn't in post production the whole way.
Oh, works great.
So they were like, "Man, you want to come and see a cut?" And I saw that, and I was like, "It's a wrap. It's a wrap."
Hell yeah.
That was just perfect, you know.
So good.
Yeah, dramatic count. Is he gonna make it? I don't know if you get up at 9 if they let that ride. Sometimes they call it a fight if you're up at 9. But anyway,
I don't know enough to know.
yeah, there was definitely debate after shooting was done, and we had a couple cuts of whether he would win or lose the fight. I think we might have even shot both to keep people guessing. But
That's interesting. Wait, you shot both like just in case there was a
but
leak to keep people guessing, or like you shot, or you weren't
yeah,
sure which way to
yeah,
go?
both. Or like the
Interesting.
producers
Yeah,
weren't sure, but also they didn't want it to get out.
interesting. That's great. Man, the editing is
Yeah,
sick in this too. It's so good.
yeah, definitely a great editing team on these movies. And then wrapping up the whole franchise here, really in a calm way. Like this movie was very much like thought of as as an indie movie conceptually, like thematically, and I think that comes across, like I said, how we shot it. So it's an indie movie wrapped in a franchise, as opposed to being like a franchise wrapped in a franchise or a big budget studio wrapped in a franchise.
That's such a cool
At
way
the time,
to think about it and approach it. I love that.
coming out of this in film school, movies like The Fighter was big and The Warrior was a good movie. That was an MMA movie with Tom Hardy. And
Dude,
we
Warrior
were
is
heavily
so good. I love
influenced.
that movie.
Warrior's so good. And that's really indie. And we were heavily influenced, being like 2000 film kids, by like City of God. So these were our movies, our touch points.
That's awesome.
And this movie, The Prophet, this French movie, that were like, really subtle and and how they depicted like the growth of the characters and things. And that's what we really zeroed in on with the characters and the growth, and even how it was shot. Which,
I've
like you
never
said, why
seen The
the final
Prophet.
fight was so like, oh, you got to see it, man.
I got it. Yeah,
It's
now I
epic.
really want to after this conversation. That's cool.
This was another day that paparazzi was there, like the only other day, or maybe the only day that paparazzi was there, because we were at the statue and they wanted to see Rocky at
They
the
knew it was
statue.
coming,
It was
man. They
pretty
knew it was
funny.
coming.
Yeah.
So
Somehow they knew we would be there this day. But this was shot early on too, I think, like this wasn't like the last day of shooting is all I mean. I don't know when this was shot actually, but
well, I feel like it would have paid to stake this place out for the entire length of the shoot because that one shot could be worth so much money. You know what I mean? Like, just because like it's so iconic. Like,
Nah, somebody leaked. Somebody told him. Maybe Stallone told him. He was like, guys, you can come. Just, let me get my shot. But this was in the treatment too. We knew that we wanted to end up here.
that's cool. It's a good decision. I don't know if I would have thought to put this at the very end. Like it would have had to go in there at some point, but I think it's great, especially like the whole one step at a time thing. Like it's good. It works really well.
Yep.
There he is. It's awesome,
Yeah.
dude. That's cool. This has been a
It's
real
still cool to
treat.
see.
I really
Yeah, I
appreciate you doing
enjoyed
this.
watching it again. Yeah, and talking about it and kind of reliving some things on a way to talk about how we shot it and remembering being on set for those days. Definitely takes
It's
me back.
awesome. Yeah, man, it's been a real treat to do this. I appreciate you taking the time. Um, so, because I think a lot of the people that are watching this are going to be, screenwriters, whether they're working or aspiring. I mean, is there anything that you want to leave them with? Any thoughts or
Um, no, I can't think of anything. And
That's great.
screenwriting is it's a tough game, you know.
It is, man.
There's no there's no telling. There's no secrets and there's no telling what's gonna happen or how you're gonna progress or what one meeting or any interaction is gonna mean, you know. Um, and that doesn't change.
That's
It
true,
doesn't
man.
change, you know,
It doesn't seem to ever stop being hard, that's for sure. Um, I
for
still love
sure.
it after all these years, but it doesn't seem to stop being hard for sure.
100%.
Um,
And I've met creators done all kind of projects. I met the guy that did Die Hard and guys that did um all kind of big movies, Hoosiers, and you know, they say the same thing. They just, what's the next job? Just keep grinding. They got
yeah,
scripts that they thought were gonna get made that didn't get made, and then they want to direct and they got a chance to direct, and then they're back on the grind and, just always go deep into your imagination and your creativity to find your
yeah,
next idea. And oh, but the one thing I would say, I guess, is like, I guess the screenwriters listening to this probably already think about it like this, but you can't just ride with one project forever or for too long. You got to kind of have multiple things, multiple
100%.
samples. Um, even if one kind of gets traction, it's like people want to know, okay, so what's next or what?
Always.
In improv, I did a lot of improv, and it's like you do a thing, then you do it the second time, and then the third time, that's the rule, that's the joke. And I think with screenwriting is similar. It's like, okay, your first sample, your second sample, now your third sample is this is who you are, the combination of those three. So defining yourself as a certain kind of writer or in a certain genre or a certain tone, you know, it might take three good scripts to let people know who you are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, as I've been finding, like, I've got this movie that got produced, but that really hasn't changed too much for me so far. Maybe it will after it's released. I don't know, but it's everybody kind of wants to know what the next thing is going to be, right? So it's like, and I've got multiple things out there doing things, but people still want to see something else. And so it never stops being a grind, or at least it hasn't for me. But it's fine, you know,
Yeah,
it's something that I really enjoy doing and I'm grateful to be able to do, you know. So
100%.
super cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. I can only assume people are going to be stoked about hearing you talk about this thing from just the genesis of it and the experience of being on set and everything that you had to share along the way. A lot of really good nuggets of writing wisdom. So thank you very much for doing it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.